David Carpenter is an award-winning Saskatchewan writer. A passion for fly fishing is a running theme in much of his work. It plays an important role in Banjo Lessons, his richly humorous coming-of-age novel, and in Courting Saskatchewan, one of his acclaimed books of essays. David Carpenter has been a passionate fly fisherman for most of his life. Trout fishing is his favorite seasonal ritual. David Carpenter lives and writes in Saskatoon. He's an active member of the thriving writing community. But as often as possible, he packs up his fishing gear and heads for the narrow hills northeast of Prince Albert. David Carpenter, down to earth.
Hi, I'm Dave Carpenter. Welcome to northern Saskatchewan. Welcome to Narrow Hills Park. It gets its name from the Eskers, the narrow hills that are formed by glaciers that wind in a serpentine fashion throughout this park, creating amazing lakes, amazing ponds, and a wonderful system of water full of trout. This water is pure, clean, and the trout grow fast and beautiful here. Brown trout, brook trout, rainbow. If you look down to that pond right now, I think you might even see some trout rising, which is why I'm starting to get a little bit excited. This is the boreal forest. It's rich in variety in terms of pines, firs, spruce, aspens. And right down there you can see the Saskatchewan provincial flower, the prairie lily. And over there there's some terrific roses in bloom, wild roses. Well, enough of this talk. Let's go fishing. Now I'm very eager to get fishing, but before we can fish we've got to tie some flies, and this first one is going to be called a leech, the slimy, dreaded leech. We're using quite a big hook here with a long shank. And there it is in all its gothic glory. This is what we're going to use on McDougall Creek, a mature version of a nymph. This is a classic fly fishing setting. This is the kind of place where fly fishing began. We know it was an active, I almost said sport, but it wasn't a sport. It was an active food-getting thing in the medieval era in England and through Northern Europe. And basically all they had was a peeled wand of some kind, and some twine, handmade twine at the end, a metal hook, and some feathers on it. And as I'm going to do, they always fish upstream. Trout are always to be fished upstream, because they're always pointing upstream when they're feeding. The reason they're pointed upstream is that's where the food comes from, floating down towards them. And as soon as you enter this stream, you're not apart from the fish anymore. You have actually entered into this predatorial place where the trout are. And you become as predatorial as you possibly can, just as the trout is being predatorial. So just in case we actually catch a fish, we'll leave the creel here and head downstream. Stealth is all. The idea here is to get into position where I can get a back cast behind me to present the fly in front of me. Very muddy bottom here. You can't take your eyes off that fly. The second you do is the second that fish will strike. Okay, are you home? Are you hungry? Here I come. There. Oh, yes. I just had 2 bites, and one was a tiny one was a keeper. The little fish always splash at the surface. They make a big noise. They haven't learned to be subtle yet. And the larger fish, you don't see them splash so much as you see them roll. Come on. For me, the stream is a kind of metaphor. Upstream is towards the source, the purest water, the beginnings of things in the flow of time. I see my own origins as at the beginning of the stream of life. And I think that for the longest time I've always wanted to fish upstream. It's almost like I'm obsessed with that beginning, the past, where I came from, my origins. And as one flows downstream, the stream gets muddier and wider and more polluted. And I think the downstream sensibility is suggestive to me of the acceptance of life's realities, how life invariably gets muddy and difficult. The ultimate realist goes with the stream, goes with the flow, and accepts reality. The idealist bucks it all the way and is always going against the current. Oh, the stream just cools the body off so wonderfully. This water is as clear as water can be in this area. Just see every little detail in the bottom now. To catch beautiful trout, you've got to have perfect, healthy, drinkable water, clear water. So automatically, every time you go trout fishing, you go to the prettiest spots, the most engaging beauty in the entire area. This is a good example right here. You'll see some things that look like 1-inch twigs down there. All along this log, attached to the log, these are actually caddis nymphs inside the casings that they've built for themselves. Open them up and see what's inside. Aha, here's one. Here's a caddis nymph. Now it's almost wholly out of its case. You can see it struggling in my hand here. Trout are mad for these fellows. And can you blame them? Oh, and there's one that has emerged. The real thing looks just like one of my flies. I got one. I got a little one. I've got a brook trout that's so small that I'm already feeling ashamed. There he is. It's all of 3.5 inches. Bye-bye.
Down to Earth continues with writer David Carpenter in Saskatchewan's narrow hills.
We are now penetrating the Gem Lake system. We've just come across big jade all along here. And there's little jade right there, which leads nicely into diamond and opal. This is Opal Lake, one of my favorite lakes around here. And it's stuffed with brookies and brown. That doesn't mean I'm going to catch one. You'll notice today there's no activity, there's no feeding right now, but we'll try anyway. I'm going to cast out here and send it backwards. There. Now in a canoe there's a nice advantage that you don't have all that shrubbery around you. You don't have to worry about branches of trees and willows and things that catch your fly. Out here in reasonably deep water, the only thing that catches your fly is a fish. Now I'm trying to imitate the motion of a minnow fleeing from an atrociously big fish. Let's try a different direction. Get back into the deeper water. One of the really good differences between fly fishing for trout and bait fishing for trout is that with a fly, especially a barbless fly, you can release the trout unharmed very, very easily. Whereas if you use bait, the trout's going to swallow that bait before it can catch it. And it'll swallow it in an area that's blood rich. And as soon as you hook it, it starts to bleed to death. And there's no way you can release a bleeding fish back into the water and expect it to live. I'm finding out that the trout are not looking for foraging nymphs. The trout are looking for are nymphs that are swimming upwards to the surface to become flies. So the idea is not to troll around. The idea is to cast and then let your fly sink and then bring it straight up as though it's struggling to become a fly. I probably sound like a fanatic about barbless hooks and about catch and release. And I guess that's because I am a fanatic. We have to remember in this country that we are the country that woke up one morning surprised that there were no cod on the East Coast anymore. We were surprised by that, and we were surprised because we, the fishermen, anybody involved with the fishery, did not listen to the scientists who warned them for years ahead of time that the cod were disappearing, the spawners were disappearing, they were overfishing, other countries were overfishing, and we had to have much more severe restrictions on what we took out. So why don't Canadians listen to their experts, their scientists, when they warn them about depleted fish stocks? I am now wearing a belly boat. This is an inner tube that you kind of wear with a harness and with neoprene waders and huge, huge frog feet. The idea is to look like a very large ballerina with frog feet. You notice how gracefully I did that? One thinks of the swan in flight versus the swan on shore. The only thing moving now is my feet and legs as I propel myself slowly towards the trout. This allows me to ease myself very quietly in among the trout, and they accept a person in a belly boat a lot more readily than they accept a person in a canoe, or especially in a motorboat. It's almost as though you're like just a huge pregnant beaver swimming among them. I went down the river paddling with Patrick Lane once. We weren't fishing, we were just watching fish. And suddenly, during a long silence, Patrick says, "Carp, right over there, fish is going to rise." And a second later, a huge fish, a buffalo fish, which is a kind of, looks like a sucker or a carp. It rose, it rose. He predicted it about 3 seconds before it rose. Absolutely. I said, "Lane, that's great. Do it again, do it again. Tell me, when's the next one going to rise?" He says, "No, come on, Lane, do it. Not gonna, no. That's all I can." I said, "Well, why can't you predict another fish?" He says, "Because I'd be thinking about it." If you're thinking about the fish, if you're thinking about how much you want to catch a fish, you're never going to catch a fish. But if you're talking about something else, and and the fish knows you're talking about something else, that's when he'll strike. But there's one other way of catching a fish in this lake, and they're not biting now. And it has to do with singing the right song, absolutely the right song. And the Carpenter clan, the ancient Carpenter clan, the pre-Christian Carpenter clan, has passed a song down through the distaff that we all had to learn in times like this when the fish weren't biting. I'll try to do it justice. It goes like this. Blame it on the bossa nova and his magic spell. Blame it on the bossa nova that he did so well. Well, da 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 da. Got one. Yes, it's about a 9-inch brook trout. That's what's called a breakfast fish. Come on, fella. Spit it out. I really do love beavers, but when they start slapping their tails in my vicinity and I'm in a belly boat, I start to get insecure. I start to think of those 2 buck teeth in the front. We spent centuries taking their pelts as part of the history of our nation, and now I have this feeling they're out for revenge. I've often thought that when I'm fishing, it's not all that different from practicing my profession, which is writing. Fishing and writing, to me, have always seemed to come from the same place. You might notice that the language of writing and the language of fishing overlap quite a bit. I think the fishing lingo came first and the writers borrowed from it. When you really like a story that you're reading, a poem that you're reading, you're hooked. You're always working with lines. There's an entire range of vocabulary where these ideas seem to overlap, and that's because when you're writing a story and when you're fishing, you're always dealing with the surface. As a writer, you're trying to create a surface beneath which things are going on. The best kind of writing, I've always thought, is suggestive writing, not where you're telling everything, but where you're suggesting many things. Beneath the surface, the real things are going on. And as an angler, all you can see is the surface. You can rarely see the fish that you're casting for. You have to have this faith that these dark monsters are down there somewhere, and it's your task to entice them up to the surface. And when you're a writer, you have to believe that deep down there in your unconscious, there is something worth dragging up. Maybe you've seen it in dreams, but there are monsters down there. There are shadowy characters down there that you must, through the suggestive power of your writing, entice to the surface. So when writing is going well and when fishing is going well, the same gears in the brain are, I think, turning over. And right now you might say, I'm having writer's block. Oh, got one! I got one! This is a good fish. Got to keep the rod tip up. I say that sentence more than any other sentence in my entire vocabulary. A beautiful brown trout, probably 16, maybe 16 and a half, 17 inches. Very strong fish. There's lots of them in here, but they're so wily, they're so hard to fool, that you just have to count yourself awfully lucky to get them. Let's check the stomach and see what this guy's been snacking on. Not very much. You can see not very much in the stomach. Right there. Let's see what it is. Oh yeah. And here we have what is very likely part of a leech that he's been eating. And these tiny things right here are the things that have been the larva version of what's been biting us today. These are mosquito larvae, I think. These little things right here and here. If not, they're chironomids. It's very hard to tell. This would be a small nymph, a caddis nymph. Our old friend the caddis that we've been following around. And these little bugs are still, in most cases, in their nymph phase, down under. And the trout have been foraging for them in about 15 feet of water or so. Well, I think it's time to say thanks to the lake for giving us such wonderful, wonderful times and such wonderful fish. Even the weather was good. I gotta tell you, I'm drooling. Let's give it a try. Amazing. Just amazing. This fishing that I do, I think of it as a seasonal ritual. The way you make any place home, as far as I'm concerned, is finding rituals that have a great deal to do with that place, the seasons in that place, the land, the water in that place, and develop rituals around that for every season. And this is one of the great seasonal rituals. In January in Saskatchewan, my seasonal ritual is to build a quinzee. Quinzee is a Dene word for igloo. It's a house of snow, basically. Another ritual in December would be to have friends over who make nothing but Saskatchewan dishes. And we eat that right around the winter solstice. But the eating of the fish is probably the great ritual in my life. Let's try that again.